Imagine a world where the last child has been born. A future where playgrounds stand empty, schools echo with silence, and humanity has simply decided to stop. This is not a story of apocalypse, of war, or of plague. This is the story of a choice. The story of the Great Refusal, and how our species, facing an unprecedented convergence of crises, willingly stepped onto the path of its own sunset. Welcome to the history of the last generation. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a slow, suffocating squeeze. By the mid-2050s, the global economy had become a prison for the aspirations of billions. Decades of accumulating government and personal debt created a system of permanent hyperinflation. The cost of basic necessities, housing, food, energy, skyrocketed, leaving wages trailing far behind. For the average person, the dream of home ownership became a fantasy, and financial security a cruel joke. In this environment of relentless economic despair, the idea of raising a child transformed. It was no longer a natural life milestone, but an impossible luxury, a financial Everest that few could even dream of climbing. The cost of education, from daycare to university, became astronomical. Healthcare, once a right, became a privilege reserved for the wealthy. Couples would run the numbers, stare at their meager savings, and come to the same heartbreaking conclusion. Bringing a child into this world would mean condemning them to a life of poverty and struggle. Parenthood became an unaffordable dream, and the birth rate began its steady, chilling decline. A generation looked at the price tag of family and collectively decided, we cannot afford this. The nurseries fell silent, one by one. As the economic vice tightened, another crisis reached its terrifying apex. Throughout the 2060s and 2070s, the planet itself began to bleed. The warnings of previous generations were no longer abstract predictions. They were the daily reality. Unprecedented heat waves, decades-long droughts, catastrophic floods, and superstorms became the new normal. Coastlines vanished, fertile lands turned to desert, and entire ecosystems collapsed. Resource depletion, from fresh water to critical minerals, sparked conflicts and mass migrations on a scale never before seen. This constant state of environmental emergency birthed a new, powerful psychological phenomenon: overwhelming environmental anxiety. How could anyone, in good conscience, bring a child into a dying world? The question haunted prospective parents. It was a dominant theme in art, in philosophy, and in late-night conversations across the globe. Bringing a new life into existence felt less like an act of hope and more like an act of cruelty. The fear of bequeathing an unlivable future, a planet of fire, flood, and famine, became a primary moral and ethical barrier to procreation. A collective decision was made not by committee or by law, but in the quiet hearts of millions. It was better to be the last generation on a healing planet than to force a new one to suffer on a broken one. While economic and environmental pressures pushed humanity away from having children, a third, equally powerful force was pulling them in a completely different direction. The digital revolution of the late 20th and early 21st centuries was merely a prelude. By the 2070s, humanity was migrating en masse into a new reality. Fully immersive, hyper-realistic virtual worlds offered an escape that was too perfect, too seductive to resist. In the digital realm, you could be anyone, do anything, experience everything, all without the burdens of the physical world. This digital escape fundamentally rewired our social structures and personal values. Why strive for a messy, complicated human relationship when a sophisticated AI companion could offer perfect understanding, unwavering support, and tailored companionship 24/7? Advanced androids and service bots filled the roles once held by family members, providing care, assistance, and even emotional connection, eliminating the practical need for a younger generation to care for the old. A profound social shift occurred. The pursuit of personal freedom, career advancement, and curated individual experiences became the new pinnacle of a successful life. The traditional family unit, already weakened by economic and environmental stress, was now seen as an archaic, restrictive institution. The very concept of legacy was redefined. It was no longer about passing on your genes, but about the impact of your digital footprint, your creative works, your contributions to the virtual commons. Biological reproduction became an outlier, a strange and demanding hobby for a dwindling few. The human need for connection, for purpose, for continuation, was being met through silicon and code, not flesh and blood. Humanity had not been conquered, it had simply been distracted. And so, we arrive at the turn of the century. The year is 2099. The birth rate is statistically zero. The Great Refusal is complete. There is no chaos, no violence. There is only a profound, planet-wide quiet. The last generation, now entering its twilight years, lives in a world engineered for a future that will never arrive. Gleaming, automated cities designed for millions are inhabited by thousands. Vast transportation networks shuttle a handful of elderly passengers. The digital worlds are more vibrant than ever, a final, dazzling refuge for a species saying a long, silent goodbye. The decline is irreversible. As the last humans live out their lives, the magnificent infrastructure of civilization will slowly power down. The lights of our cities will blink out, one by one. Our greatest achievements, our art, our science, our history, stored on servers that will eventually fail, will fade into digital dust. Humanity did not end in fire or ice. It is ending in the quiet hum of a server farm, in the empty swing on a playground, in the echo of a school hallway. We faced the abyss, and instead of building a bridge, we simply chose to stop walking. We became the curators of our own museum, the wardens of our own magnificent, silent tomb. A species that reached for the stars, but in the end, chose to fade away. Thank you for watching.